Welcome to the Forefront 5. I'm your host, Dr. Betsy Wormley. And today we have two extremely special guests. One you're all familiar with, our very own dermatopathologist, John Pujols. And the other we will introduce shortly. But first, this podcast kicks off our mission in 2021 as a group to refine our leadership skills. From the physicians to our assistants in the clinics, from the team leads to the billing clerks, we all have room to improve and grow our leadership skills. So I challenged your physician leaders, the board of directors, to come up with a guest that most exemplifies leadership in their lives. So Dr. John Pujols will start, and I must say, I am so very excited to welcome our guest. John, why don't you take the honor of introducing your exceptional leader?
Thank you, Betsy. It is a distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you all Dr. Norvell Coots to our Forefront Dermatology group through the Forefront 5 podcast. Dr. Coots, as we will soon hear, has had to date, quite an enviable and distinguished military and executive medicine career spanning over 3.5 decades. So to start, Dr. Norvell Coots currently serves as the president and CEO of Holy Cross Health and the president and CEO of the Maryland region of Trinity Health. Holy Cross is a $600 million healthcare system consisting of a Holy Cross Hospital, Holy Cross Germantown Hospital, Holy Cross Health Network, Holy Cross Health Foundation, and the Holy Cross Radiation Treatment Center, all located in Montgomery County. He is currently the chairman of the board of the Maryland Physicians Care, a Medicaid MCO, and serves as the executive committee of the Maryland Hospital Association. He is a member of the Maryland Governor's COVID-19 Task Force. Switching gears a little bit, in 2016, he retired from the United States Army as a brigadier general. His final assignment was as the commanding general of the Regional Health Command Europe and as the command surgeon for the U.S. Army Europe and 7th Army. His previous assignments have included Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Medical Command, the Assistant Surgeon General of the Army, and as the Surgeon General for the U.S. Forces in Afghanistan. In 2008 to 2011, he served as the final commander of the historic Walter Reed Healthcare System and Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. He is board certified in dermatology, holds a master's degree in strategy from the Army War College, and a certification in advanced healthcare management from the Interagency Institute for Federal Healthcare Executives. His civilian healthcare awards include the Scroll of Merit of the National Medical Association, recognition as one of the recipients of the 2018 Distinguished Healthcare Leadership Award from the National Association of Health Sector Executives, and recognition on the 2017 and 2019 Becker's Healthcare/American Medical Association list of 105 physician leaders to know. His military awards and decorations include the Distinguished Service Medal and the Defense Superior Service Medal. He has been awarded the Legion of Honor from France and is a member of the Order of the Military Medical Merit. He is also a member of the American Academy of Dermatology's Leadership Circle on Volunteerism. And that's only a few things that he's accomplished in his career so far.
That's a mouthful. I think that's the official longest Forefront 5 introduction because you hold so many accolades. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here with you today. Thanks for the invitation.
So a little bit, he sounds super serious from his intro, but then you heard the song he chose for the introduction. Tell us a little bit about your song and why you chose it.
Yeah, so, first of all, I'm an older dad, a young kid, so I've got 2 young teenagers, so I stay up on all the hip hop music and everything. But, to get through this COVID-19 pandemic and to keep the morale up and everything, I absolutely love Pitbull's anthem, I Believe That We Will Win. I mean, I played that for my leadership team the other day. I mean, we said we might even go out and do like a little TikTok thing in the parking lot when the snow clears up. But that is the anthem. And when it talks about fear, where you can forget everything and run, or you can, what's the other one? Face everything and rise. Because, every day we show up knowing what we're going to face with COVID and everything. So we rise every day. We rise to the occasion because that's who we are as Holy Cross. So that is our anthem here.
I love everything about your song choice. I'm going to add it to my hockey playlist to pump up the kids.
There you go.
It's perfect. You and I actually hold a similarity. I attended the University of Oklahoma to play golf in undergrad, stayed for med school. I ended up liking Oklahoma so much I married an Okie. It's a special place. Tell me about your upbringing there. As you were growing up in Oklahoma, what person or persons did you first look up to as a role model or leader? Your minister, priest, parent, teacher?
Yeah, so it's good to be interviewed by a fellow Sooner here, and it's funny that you call your spouse an Okie, because we know that means something different than a Sooner. So, but we won't go there. Anyway, so I grew up in Tulsa, and my dad, I was a late child of old parents too. My dad was a physician who was a Virginian, and he and three classmates from Virginia were at Meharry Medical College, and all three decided to go to the Wild West. And so in the 1930s, my dad graduated from medical school in 36. Oklahoma was still the Wild West because it hadn't been a state for, but 20 some odd years. So they all three went. So my dad and a friend settled in Tulsa, and one settled in Oklahoma City. That's how I came to be born in Tulsa. But I was born in the early 60s. And so I grew up in a segregated Tulsa. I grew up in North Tulsa. My dad was one of 5 Black physicians, and I think there was one Black dentist, Dr. Taylor. In town, it served North Tulsa. And while Tulsa had desegregated the schools in the 60s, they didn't integrate the schools until the 70s. So I went to Ralph Bunche Elementary School. If I had stayed to go to middle school, it would have been Marion Anderson Junior High, and then the high school was Booker T. Washington. So it was, north side of town was the Black side of town. Everything was named for Black people. It was our own little world. Remember, Tulsa had the Tulsa Massacre in 1921. And so I remember growing up during the Civil Rights era, and when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I remember my parents crying like hope was lost. The entire world was lost. And then they suddenly spun around and realized, oh my God, there's going to be another riot. We were so afraid that there was going to be another 1921 riot. My mom had been part of the poverty program under President Johnson, and at that time was the president of the National Urban League, the executive director there in town. And my dad, in his early days, had brought the NAACP to Tulsa and done a bunch of things with the Chamber of Commerce. So my folks were really the sort of local civil rights leaders. And so probably looking up to anyone, I just looked up to my parents and everything that they were doing, and especially leading through that crisis. They brought the mayor, they brought several of his staff, they brought some of the Black leaders in town together, and even brought the Black Panthers. And they were all in our family room one night talking about how to keep Tulsa from blowing up. And, that was 2 or 3 hours. And here I am, a little fly on the wall. I'm playing with Matt Mason's Space Station over here on the floor, but listening to my parents and everything, and everyone talking and arguing back and forth and stuff. But cooler heads prevailed, and Tulsa did not burn a second time. And so, I got to give credit where credit is due. And that's really to my parents. So they were what set me up. My mom was a tyrant. She made sure that I did something every summer. She said, your summer isn't free. You got to learn to do something for society. So whether it was, working in Head Start or working in the Center for Physically Limited, where I was the sort of the swimming buddy of a little blind kid, to make sure that he didn't drown and make sure he got dressed and things like that, or spending the summer doing a project at the Gilcrease Museum. But she made sure that I did something community related every summer. So that was my foundation.
What an incredible legacy. And I think that's so timely to think back on and talk about based on what's going on in the US this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's unbelievable. Are your folks still around?
No. My parents died years and years ago. I mean, they live on in me and in my memories of them. And honestly, I think everything I've done in my entire life, I have done trying to impress my parents, even though my dad died when I was 16. My mom died probably when I was in my 40s. But I still think I'm trying to live up to their expectations.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They're so proud of you. as we are as well. John, you had a few questions for him.
Sure. Yeah, let's start off, Van, if you don't mind. What were some of your first leadership roles growing up, whether it was student government or maybe some club memberships that you mentioned, or even Army or ROTC?
Yeah, so again, I got involved in absolutely everything from an early age because my parents pushed me out there and said, get involved. So I think in elementary school, probably my leadership thing, I was a lieutenant in the safety patrol. And I wanted that job so badly because the lieutenant got to wear an orange belt. The captain wore this little yellow belt and everyone else had white, but I had that orange belt. And believe it or not, I actually got a life-saving award because I jumped and grabbed the kid and pulled him out of traffic. And so who so I think that started it. And then certainly leaderships in clubs, and I was the president of the youth group at church, and I don't know if it's by default or what, but I think the entire 4 years that I was in high school, I was the president of the youth group. And then I left Oklahoma when I was 12. My folks decided to move back to Virginia. And so I went to a Catholic military high school. And so for the 4 years of high school, I wore a uniform every day. And by senior year, I was the adjutant. I was the third in command of the battalion. And I still hold the record as the most decorated cadet in the history of the school. So yeah, that was the start.
And since we've known each other for 30 years, that is a brand new story. or thank you for telling us
plenty of stories.
Thank you. How would you best describe your leadership style, and what elements or qualities would you think would be important, to be a strong leader?
Yeah, so I think if I have to call it a style, I call it, more or less a decentralized leadership style. I mean, the leadership doesn't begin with me. Leadership really begins with all of my subordinates, because I want my subordinates to feel that they are unencumbered, that I'm not a micromanager or whatever, that I recognize their strengths and I recognize their qualifications, and they can lead within the full spectrum of their qualifications without having to look up to me and say, hey, is it okay if I do this? Because I believe if you establish sort of a vision of what right looks like, that you kind of create the parameters around which you want your organization to blossom and grow and develop, and what the philosophy of the organization is. Your mission, vision, values-based organization. You believe in dignity, respect, however you define it. Then you have to trust that your people also now clearly understand what it is you're defining, and then they can go off, and as long as it's financially sound, fiscally, morally right, and ethically right, they can make any decision they want without having to ask Mother May I, of me. And I want people to cascade that down to all of their subordinate leaders as well.
No, that sounds like a really sound way of doing it. For you though, having been in a military high school, did you see the military later on in college or later as kind of a way to hone your natural leadership abilities, or did you see the military as just an arena in which you could be the leader that you knew you were destined to become?
As long as I can remember, people would say, oh, I think you can be a general one day. I think you could, so people saw something in me that I'm not sure I even saw, because I'm not sure I was 100% settled on a military career or anything like that. My dad used to talk to me about Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur so much that I thought that they were my uncles, and he would talk about World War II. He was too young for World War I and too old for World War II. But he would tell me about World War I and World War II and duty, honor, country. And so I always knew that service to the nation was going to be important. I don't know that it was necessarily the Army, because when it came time to apply, I applied to all the service academies and all the different ROTCs. And I got picked up for none of the service academies originally. And the only ROTC that picked me up was Navy ROTC. And I had a naval scholarship for 4 years to Tulane University in New Orleans. And that's where I was headed. And then my congressional appointment to West Point came through. And that's what then sent me off to the Army. But had that not happened, you might be calling me Admiral.
That is fantastic how that happens. It's so funny. Quick aside, my father had a 4-year Army ROTC scholarship at Marquette, and then at the last moment he said, the Air Force looks a little bit better. became an Air Force officer, a career. So you did that.
It's service to the nation. That's
I-
all it is, right? Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much. And I think Betsy may have a follow-up question or two for you.
Yeah, going back to your leadership style, I like what you talked about, saying you're decentralizing leadership, as long as people are doing it, fiscally and morally responsibly. I think that's so applicable for our forefront doctors in our clinic. I think we run into a lot of problems when the doctors have to micromanage everything and they don't give a little bit of responsibility to let the nurses or the MAs run with it. That sounds very not military. Did you develop this in the military? And talk a little bit about how that's morphed for you.
Yeah, I did. I think this is one of those things where as I moved up the ladder, I sort of defined and refined my own leadership style. And I think, as a young platoon leader, I might have been a little bit more of a micromanager simply because I didn't know the way. And I think that's how you always start. Like, I got the power, I need to make sure this is done. And I gradually learned that as long as you instill the right concepts in people, all you as a leader need to do are 5 cardinal things. Check, 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 and check. That's all you got to do, right? Your folks will do everything else. So I think that over the years, I sort of refined it. But what helped me was having very bad leaders and having good leaders, because I think you can learn as much from a bad leader as you can from a good. I mean, obviously, what you learn from a bad leader is what not to do and how not to be a leader. But and so that's a good balance, because it really does show you when you meet a good leader who makes you feel good about yourself and about the job that you're doing and you really want to do more, versus one who depresses you and kind of makes you want to quit and makes you question yourself. You can see those things. So anytime I would start down a line that may have leaned toward that bad leader, I made a quick correction and said, no, absolutely not. I will never do that. I'll always lean toward these good leaders that I've seen.
That's great. And I think for our forefront docs, PAs, and nurse practitioners who are trying to hone their leadership skills, thinking about what a good versus a bad leader is important. Can you give us some examples of bad leadership?
Yeah. So bad leaders, they'll yell at you, and they'll yell at you in public. They will make you feel small. They'll make you feel bad. They'll highlight the mistakes that you have made. They'll always focus in on the mistakes and never focus in on, what went right. So they break those cardinal rules. Bad leaders also do not really become fully engaged, fully involved members of the team, because to really lead a team, you have to be seen and felt to be a member of the team. You look at any bad leader and they'll always say, yeah, he's not really one of us, or she's not one of us. Because those team dynamics are very, very important. And bad leaders never really get to know who their people are, because who your folks are at work and who they are outside of work and at home are very often 2 different people. And where they really live, and the real person is that person outside of work, not the person at work. So if you get to find what motivates them, for instance, at West Point, I had this lady who was a little curmudgeon. Everyone was like, "Oh, stay away from her. If you got to go get a stamp on your thing, or a signature, you'll pay for it." And I'll say, well, what makes her tick? Come to find out, for 35 years, she made the sets for Little Theater in her little town just north of West Point on the Hudson. And so I said, okay, I'm start highlighting some of my staff and talking about who they were. So I created a Commander's Award for volunteerism. And she was my first recipient. And I talked about, her 30 some odd years of working Little Theater and working with the kids. She had the biggest smile. And from that point on, she was the happiest person at work. But it was because I recognized her for who she really is, not just the little lady who stamps things and puts signatures on things in the office, but all the stuff that she's done over her life outside of work and brought that in. So the more you get to know your people and know what really motivates them, you can then take their strengths and utilize that when you make assignments. You can play up to their strengths, and then you can take their weaknesses and in the places where they're not very strong and start to develop them and make those strong suits instead of weak suits.
I love everything about that. In fact, I think too often people are afraid to combine work versus non-work, and you hit the nail on the head. People want to be valued for who they are as a person.
Right.
I have a nurse in clinic that I know, even if I'm 10 minutes behind, on Monday morning, she wants to show me pictures of her kids and what they did over the weekend. And if I spend the time talking about her and her kids, and we joke about this, she knows this. She says, "Hey, Dr. Wernley, I know you're behind, but now's the time to look at my pictures." And we laugh about it. But she's motivated the rest of the day. And I truly do value her as a person. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Don't be scared to combine work versus non-work, because it's really who they are as people. That's fantastic. And that fits right into the diplomacy question that John had.
Yes, thank you. What's interesting, I guess I've heard you discuss, Van, over time, how diplomacy is a integral part of finding solutions to challenging problems, problems that theoretically would not have a solution because no common ground can be found. How does an effective leader use their abilities, I guess, to get others to collaborate where they might be completely on two sides of the fence?
Well, so so the first thing you have to do, as a leader, you go in and get a lay of the land and figure out, okay, who are the power players here? Why are they the power player? Why does everyone look to them before they answer? Kind of get the feel of the team dynamics and everything. And then, your role as a leader, in addition to kind of creating the environment, what right looks like, is to build bridges too, and to make sure that, if your team has broken off into little groups, that you build bridges across those groups and you bring people back in and you create a brand new team dynamic. Sometimes, some people don't fit the team, and you have to make the hard decision that, it's maybe there's another team someplace else where you do fit, but you don't fit here anymore. But I think everyone really wants to do the right thing ultimately. Everyone's point of view, everyone wants to be heard. And so if you create an environment and a team dynamic where people at least feel that their voice is heard and that their thoughts matter, then even if the decision is made is not the one they wanted to have made, at least they feel that they have played a part in the decision-making process, in that discernment, by having their voice heard. So everybody's voice matters.
What do you think has been best in your experience to motivate subordinates or peers in let's say the goals that have been identified and set? Is it just setting the clearest vision in the beginning? Is it leading by example? Is it just plain hard work? Or what do you think are the best elements to get others to?
That's
okay,
correct.
yes, all of those.
Yes, it is all of those things. You have to vision. Your job as a leader is to vision. So you set that, you create the environment. You tell folks what the expectations are. If you have left and right limiters, let them know there are left and right limiters. That way they don't bounce up against them and cross over and make mistakes. You never want to set your people up for a mistake. You always want to set them up for success. And then you as a leader have to model what right looks like. If it's the way you dress, if it's the way you speak, if it's the way you address patients, if it's the way you address your staff, if it's the way you turn around and finish your charts and get them done, in an expeditious manner, you have to just set the example and just show people, the walking and talking, the getting to meet people and stuff like that. People will not go out of their shell unless they're shown that it's safe to get out of that shell. So you also have to create an environment of trust. And so, once you've created all of that, then as a mentor, then you just start to kind of help shape people and help kind of push them along. If they're coming along this, hey, no, how about let's come back this way a little bit, but you always do it with kindness. I think that's what's important too.
No, that sounds wonderful. I think we try to do that at Forefront, and we try to get everybody involved, knowing what the vision is and what the culture is and what our short-term and long-term goals are, and keep reaching new peaks. And that was our vision and focus last year, setting new sites and never being satisfied, and with where you are, always trying to look for the next highest peak.
Right.
Are there any special techniques you found, to overcoming maybe philosophical differences of others, or low morale, or are there any other obstacles that are the hardest to overcome in individuals that maybe don't share the vision at first?
You just keep visioning. you keep visioning, and you keep walking the walk. I mean, if you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk to match it. And folks will eventually come along, or they'll leave, or they'll just decide, I'm sick of this. This is not for me. I'm out of here. And, and that's fine. That's fine too. They'll find a fit someplace else. But don't sweat that, and don't beat yourself up if you just can't bring somebody along. If you just can't bring them along, sometimes people are resistant, and sometimes people don't realize that they're being obstacles to their own success. Your job is to help them get out of their own way, but some people are just resistant to that, and so at some point you have to let them go.
No, I completely agree. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, you're talking a little bit about walking the walk and talking the talk. I bet you are an incredibly disciplined gentleman. I bet you make your bed every day. I bet you have like these incredible habits. What are your habits that are like must do priorities every day? I think that's fun to know about you.
Well, so the first thing is, I get up at 5 and I go downstairs and I do 30 minutes of workout on the machines. I turn CNN on so I can like get my blast of whatever the news is of the day, or one of the local stations. And I'm also kind of multitasking. I'm reading emails that came in over the night, but I'm on the treadmill, or I'm on the ab blaster or something. But I have to do an exercise routine every day. And so I do a CEO blog that I started, 11 months ago during the start of the pandemic. And that was one of the first things I said. I said, to be mentally ready to deal with whatever we have to deal with, you have to be physically ready as well. And there's nothing better than getting up in the morning and doing a quick exercise routine to start your day. So I do. Yes, I do make my bed. I lay my suit out the night before, because that's a military thing, getting your clothes ready to jump in them the next day. So I pick everything out and have it all lined up. Once a week, I sit down with my kids. We polish all of my shoes so that the shoes are ready for the week too. So yeah, I'm fairly organized and fairly regimented. I'm out the door by 7 o'clock because I know that way I'll get to work at 7:45. My first meeting is at 8. And so in the afternoon, I'm out by a certain time to get home because I want to get home and have dinner with my kids. So yeah, it's fairly regimented, and my kids, sometimes pretend to march around behind me. But 36 years in the military, that's just what you do.
Well, I think humans just do better if you have a plan and structure. My husband makes fun of me because he said I'm the only person, and I hope you'll prove him wrong on this podcast. He says I'm the only person in the world that will set my alarm for 5:43 because it takes 2 minutes to get my workout tights on, my shoes, and turn the coffee machine on. And then by 5:45, I'm set. Is that weird?
No, that's not. That's exactly right. So I wake up, I've got some redundancy. So I've got my alarm clock, but my phone wakes me up. And I always wake up 2 minutes before my alarms go off anyway. I head to the bathroom, take my medications, get dressed, go downstairs. I hit the coffee machine. I go downstairs to the basement, exercise. By the time I come up, the coffee's ready. I throw that egg in, make breakfast, whatever, and boom, back up by 0600. I'm back in the bathroom, getting ready to shower, shave, everything. No, you're perfect. That's fine.
Thank you for making me feel better. Let's go back to your skills as kind of a leader in the hospital system or the clinic. Tell me about delegation. I think we touched on it briefly that sometimes physicians are afraid to delegate and they micromanage. How important is it to identify and delegate duties to those with special skills in the organization?
So I think anytime you have folks who are able to do certain parts of the tasks of the day, that's just a force multiplier. That makes your life that much easier. I mean, as physicians, yeah, we're self-contained. You could throw a fit if the tech doesn't come in and set your trays up right. Well, I set my own trays up and do all the, you can do all of that, but why, right? If their job is to set the tray up, let them be the best tray setter, in the world. If theirs is to, get the patient ready over here, get this right, do this paperwork, whatever, let them do it. Because, I mean, that's what jazzes them about coming to work. If they come into work every day and their trepidation, oh my God, Dr. Coots is going to yell at me if I don't have the retractors on the table right, or if I don't have this right, or, if I don't have his slides set up over here, or my God, if there's dust on the microscope, something like that, then you're nothing more than a tyrant, and you won't be productive. there's a big fat book I have, on physician productivity. And I'm like, this whole thing is a waste, because it's just, how do you motivate people? And then how do you allow other people to be a part of the entire process? So if everyone comes in and says, okay, you're going to do this, you're this, your job is this, okay, team, let's go. It's teaming, it's creating that team. And the physician, in this instance, is the leader of the team.
Mhm.
Someplace else in the hospital here, it might be, the senior nurse is the leader of the team, whoever, that's okay. That's the team leader, but everybody's a member of the team, and everybody's got their team task that makes that team more effective. And so that's it, just creating that sense of a team, an interrelated team.
I love it. I love it.
All right,
John.
follow me to combat. Let's go.
I'm in.
Right.
I'm ready to fight.
There you
You're
go.
very motivated.
Right. There you go. I think we're got maybe just a couple more questions, Dan, if you don't mind. In the Army, we kind of are taught to employ this kind of this on-the-spot correction type of thing, where you see something wrong and you want to constructively correct people or criticize them in a nice way. I mean, how should leaders constructively correct or criticize subordinates when they have gone off course? I mean, are there some techniques that you employ just so that they know they're valued, but they don't feel bad for having been corrected, and they can obviously change that behavior for, the long term?
Well, first of all, there's an old saying that you always acknowledge in public and admonish in private. So if you really have to admonish somebody, don't do it in front of the team. Don't do it in front of the group. Don't let Mary, you screwed that tray up. Why did you do that? Don't ever do that again. No, pull Mary aside and maybe tell her a story. I like telling stories, because there's always a story, whether it's a story out of the Bible, a story out of a book I read, a story out of something I've done in my own life, because certainly coming up through the ranks, I made enough mistakes that I can use a mistake out of my own life that correlates with something that they might have done. And I'll often just pull folks into the office and just sit down with them in my office. Just, you sit on the couch, I'll sit on the chair over here, and let's just talk. And people are usually very appreciative of the fact that you took the time to even talk to them about what it was and how to make a correction. But they're also very pleased that you didn't do it in front of everybody else. And that's because there's another saying, people may not remember what it is that you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's very true, because that's who we are as human beings. We feel, and feeling is so very important.
I think that's wonderful, because often you're right. People might learn from that correction that was constructive and go on to be even more motivated, even better leaders themselves down the road. And I guess my last question for you, in a way, at this point, it would be, how do you best, over time, even in your career, identify the newer or the younger leaders in your organization to say, I think someone like this person is going to be a great leader down the road and might be the equivalent of a DCCS, or maybe they're going to be, vice president of a hospital, that kind of thing?
So again, I think it goes back to knowing your people. I mean, when you get to know people, you can really see things in them. Just like people used to say to me, oh, man, you're going to be a general one day, or, you'll be a leader, or you've got natural leadership ability. If people didn't really know me, they wouldn't say that, because they wouldn't see it. And so you can walk right by people all day long, never know their name, never know anything about them. You'll never see that person could be a leader. But when you take the time to get to know the members of your team, it's you'll be able to really tell who those folks are. And then the second thing is, you've got to be willing to see it. You've got to be able to realize that, hey, I'm the CEO right now, but I'm not going to be the CEO forever. Who on my team could be the CEO? Who on my team could rise up behind me? The Marines have a great philosophy. Every Marine a leader. So you look at that young Marine rifleman, and I, as the platoon leader, if I go down, who's going to pick up and carry on the mission? Well, hopefully it's the platoon sergeant. If the platoon sergeant goes down, who's going to pick up and carry on the mission? It's the squad leader. If the squad leader goes down, it might be that young Marine rifleman private who has to pick up and go, hey guys, we're supposed to get to the top of that hill. Come on, let's go and get there. So, that's the same thing. Every member of your team could potentially lead and be in your position one day, or Betsy in your position one day. And being able to recognize that and say, and sit down and talk to them and say, what do you want to do out of life? Would you like to be the CEO? Would you like to be the group president? Would you like to be an X, Y, and Z? And if they say yes, then as the leader, you have an obligation now to help mentor them, to help set them along the way. I have a reading list. When people say, hey, I'd like to be like you one day, I'll say, well, here's the first thing I got for you. Here's a reading list. Start reading these books, and it'll kind of start to get you there. And then let's sit down and talk about it. Or, hey, I recommend you go take this course. Or, hey, I recommend you go get this master's in healthcare administration or a master's in business. Or, hey, I think you need to do that. You just kind of start to guide them and develop them and let them start to build, from your experiences, but build their own innate leadership capabilities and start to blossom. And then you have to trust them enough to give them some responsibility to continue to grow as well, because no one will ever grow if they're static, if they never move out of their job or out of their position. If you keep them in a box, they'll never grow. You gotta take that top off that box and give them an opportunity.
I agree with you. I think one of my biggest disappointments is when I just within Forefront look at a clinic and somebody else wants a regional manager or me or one of the board of directors to come in and train their staff or discipline their staff because they say, I'm not really a leader. I think everyone's a leader. So the Marine philosophy is perfect. Even if you're an MA that's brand new to Forefront, you should be leading something. So that's my goal, is for everyone in Forefront to realize they're a leader, and use, some of your words to build that. Speaking of your words, can you give us a few books for people to read?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's a classic one. There's How to Be a CEO by Fox. It's a small reader, but I recommend that one because it says interesting things like never drink with the boss. It's the little tips like this, I think, that are very important. There's another one, Rules and Tools for Leaders, which is very good. George Patton is an all-time hero of mine. I mean, George Patton was, as a young officer, was writing all kinds of stuff. He's underrated as a military thinker. We think of him in terms of the general in World War II and the movie Patton and stuff like that. But as a young cavalry officer, he was a great writer and a great thinker. So there are a lot of books about his leadership style. So I said, get this book, Patton on Leadership. And those are just a start. And then I've got intermediate books, and I've got, books for those who really want to go above and beyond. But there's another good one called Presentation Zen. It's about how to do a really good PowerPoint presentation without, knocking out all the viewers. I having too many words on the slides or something like that. Put up a slide with a shark, and boom, it surprises everybody. And then, now that you got everyone's attention, now you can talk. So those are some of the books I would start with.
I love it. We always end the Forefront 5 with 5 key takeaways. So what 5 tips of advice would you leave us as we build up our leadership skills on all levels at Forefront?
Okay, so the first is really get to know your people. Leading the team means being a member of the team. Don't ever forget that. That's the cardinal rule. The second is be the leader that you've always wanted to have. You know what a good leader looks like. You know how a good leader makes you feel. Be that leader. Make your folks look up to you the same way you would look up to them. And then the 3 things I always talk about is never give up. And that's my philosophy. I'm like a plugger. I've hit so many walls and fallen down so many times in my career. When people read that bio, they don't get to see all of the obstacles that I've overcome and things like that, and the self-doubt and everything else that allowed me to get to where I am. But never give up. The first is never give up on yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, why in the world would you ever expect anyone else to believe in you? So never give up. The second is everything that you have that you think defines you, your house, your car, your job, your money, your clothes, even your good name can be taken away from you. The only thing that you truly own are your dreams, and you have an obligation to work as hard as you can to make your dreams come true. So never give up on your dreams. And the third is for those of us in healthcare, I always say never give up on those who trust their health, their wellness, and often their very lives to you, and that is your patients. If you never give up on your patients will never, ever give up on you. Never give up.
What a great way to end this episode of the Forefront 5. Thanks so much for participating, both of you.
My pleasure.
And offering such amazing information for us to ponder and apply during this difficult time. We're going to leave everyone pumped up with Van's choice of song, Pitbull.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
You know what spreads faster than any virus? It's fear. Now when it comes to fear, you can either forget everything and run. I said or you can face everything and rise. I believe. And let me tell you what I believe. I believe that. I believe we gon' face everything. I believe that we will win. It's not how you fall, it's how you get back up. And what don't kill us make us stronger, boy. Bet that up, take a swing at us. You better hit hard, cause when we swing back, it's like, oh God, it's time to knuckle up and fight hard. Now let's all buckle up and fight hard. Que Dios bendiga a todas tus familias, mi amigo, se parta mandito. Vamos a darle duro esta vida. Say it with me. I believe, say it with me. But we gon' win the war. I'm from the bottom, I'm that uncut, real raw. When things get tough, that's when we show up. That's when we show out. That's when we show yo. It's time to knuckle up and fight hard. Now let's all buckle up and fight hard. Que Dios bendiga a todas tus familias, mi amigo, se parta mandito. Vamos a darle duro esta vida. Say it with me. I believe. Say it with me. Bottom line, no matter what, face everything and rise.